Hello, I'm Greg Hawk. I'm here to tell you another treasure story. I got this one out of John Mitchell's book he published in 1954. It's called Lost Mines and Buried Treasures Along the Old Frontier. And then he's got a chapter he calls Don Joaquin and his Gold Mine. And he talks about a fellow named Don Joaquin Campos that came from Guadalajara up here into the Sierra Estrella Mountains around the 1840s. And anyway, in 1847, a rider come right into his camp telling him that the American Army was coming and taking over all the mines. And Don Joaquin got pretty nervous about that. And by this time, he had quite a pile of gold and gold nuggets put together. So supposedly he had 1,500 pounds of gold bar and nuggets. He loaded on burros, and they headed out of the mountains up through zigzag course through the mountains. He sent his main crew down to the end of the mountains to set up camp. He told me to meet him there that night. And he took another fellow with him, and they come to an old shaft or something. They buried all that gold in there and covered up with baguano. And then he killed this guy, so the guy would never know where the gold was. And he made a little map. And anyway, he got down to his camp where these other fellows were, and they were wondering where this other man was. And he didn't say much. Well, they figured it out, and the story was, Mitchell tells that they killed Don Joaquin during the night and buried him, and they took his map off of him. Years later, somebody come back to look for the gold, and they never found it. So that's kind of Mitchell's story. It took place in 1847. So we're going to go out there. I'm going to take you to the trailhead. We're going to hike up the canyon to the rock house. I'll give you the coordinates when we get out there, okay? Now the Sierra Estrella Mountains are southwest of Phoenix, not very far. The highest point is called Haze Peak. It's 4,512 feet, named after Ira Haze, who was one of the 6 Marines that raised the flag on Iwo Jima during the Second World War. So that's just a little bit of history. Okay, if you look at this topo map, you'll notice that there's not a lot of roads out there. It doesn't show it. So what you'll need to do is go on Google Earth and plug in these coordinates I give you and plot a course out through the desert there, kind of a sand road and gravel till you get up to the trailhead. Okay, I usually go out, I go south on Rainbow Valley Road till the pavement ends, turn left on Riggs Road till the pavement ends, kind of jog to the right, keep going. It's still Riggs Road, but it's sand. And you go all the way out to the end of that till you hit Power Line Road, make a right, and follow the Power Line Road down a couple miles till you get to the turnoff point to go back to the trailhead, okay? Now if you notice on this topo map, the orange line I've got is the outline of the Gila River Indian Reservation. So we kind of take note of that. Comes up here, across, and down kind of the ridge of the mountains right here, on down. This is also a dividing line between Maricopa and Pinal County, okay? So kind of keep that in mind. There's also a wilderness area out here that has 14,400 acres in it. And the road you'll be on will skirt the edge of that wilderness area in places, but as long as you stay on that road, you'll be all right. Okay, so let's head on out, and I'll see you at the trailhead. Okay, we're up here at the trailhead right now. It's 4-wheel drive, really rough getting up here. But anyway, here's the coordinates to the trailhead and the rock house, okay? It's about 4/10 of a mile back into the rock house. So we'll take a few shots going in, and then I'll take some shots of the rock house and some other features up there We're looking for the rock house, the mine shaft, maybe some old stone corrals and whatever. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'll take some shots. Okay, we're heading up the trail. You notice little cairns along the way here, marking the path going up the canyon. We took around here, we did a little panoramic, see the valley. So, all right, let's keep heading. We'll head back on up here. We'll be up there in about 30 minutes. Okay, we made it up here to the rock house. It only took about 20 minutes. We did a little faster than I thought. You notice this little lower rock wall, that wasn't there years ago. But there's pictures of this back in 1935. It was an article in Desert Magazine. And then I saw some pictures in 1955 where the top was covered with Ocotillo branches for shade. So I would say this thing is at least built probably prior to 1900, maybe in the 1850s. So this has been here quite a while. So we're gonna go ahead and I'll walk around and give you a few shots inside. Then we'll go across the stream bed over here to the other side, see if we can't find that shaft. And there's supposed to be a spring up here too. So we'll have a look around and show you what I can find, all right? Let's go ahead and have a look inside. It's got a little window looking out over the stream bed out there. You notice there's no mortar or anything. This is all dry stacked rock. There's quite a bit of work to put something like that together. Here's a view as we was coming up on it and looking up the canyon and around. As you can see, it's quite a ways down to get out into the flats. Okay, we're about 100 yards upstream from the old rock house on the other side here. The pan around here, you'll see this old shaft, and you'll see all these rock dry stacked in there to hold these big rock up. Supposedly at one time this shaft was 75 foot deep and had a drift going out from under it. But over the years it's filled in. A lot of people's tried mining it. As you can see, it's pretty well filled in now. And it'd be very dangerous to get down there and work, because one of these big rocks give away, it wouldn't be good. Okay, let me give you a little different view up here. All right. Okay, let's look around here for a second. Let's see what were they mining? What were they looking for? And what you want to look for is some ore. And I would say what they were looking for is something like this. Is quartz. It's got color to it. They're probably chasing that, and possibly there might have been some gold into it at one time. When it's pure white, usually it doesn't have anything in it. But this is probably what they're going for, especially when you start getting little bug holes like that. You want to look for it. Brown. So that's what they were probably going down on, the mining up here. Here's another little digging right here, and some other pieces of quartz. So that's probably what they were mining at one time. There's even a little bit of green back there on that one piece. So, all right, let's head back down and see what we can find. I'm a few hundred yards downstream of the old rock house. You see on top of the bedrock, there's these little pools. Gather water, rainwater, or seeps coming down through here. If you keep following it, you'll see a few more of them. They call them little tanks or whatever. It's a good place for animals and birds and stuff to get water when it's dry. Okay, let's keep heading on down. I climbed up above the old stream bed here, opposite side of where the trail is. And if you look real closer, across the way there, the bank over there's got stacked rock alongside of it for some reason. Could have been an old corral along there or some place they kept things, I don't know. We'll go and have a look. But if they've been there over 100 years, they probably, some of us fell down in the meantime. Okay, I wanted to show you just, they got these stacked rocks. Kind of, any place where animals might get through, they've stacked rocks. And something like a corral or something up here. You can see, and it comes right on around too. So they must have had something corralled in here at one time, years ago. Just across the way, there's a trail that goes up to the rock house. But anyway, let's go on down to the trailhead. Okay, we made it back from our hike, and I just wanted to tell you a couple more stories pertaining to that mine up there in that rock house. You can find a lot of this online. That's where I saw some of the stories written by different people. But anyway, a guy named Matt Brady posted 6 segments to a story he'd put together called The Old Spanish Coal Mine. And 3 of those segments were actual stories written by Mitchell, which we went through. One by a guy named Milton Rose and another one by Ray Howland. So digging into that, one written by Rose was written for True West magazine, and the article he wrote was actually spread over 3 segments on 3 different issues back in 1958 and 1959 in True West magazine, which you can still go back into their archives and look at and read. Okay, well, Rose tells about him and his father going out there mining or prospecting around those mountains, the Sierra Australia mountains, and they would come out and they'd head back toward Phoenix. Well, there was an old house alongside the road, and they stopped because they was thirsty, and there was an older Indian couple there, and they introduced themselves. So the older Indian fella, his name was Chief Six, and he was blind at that time. He was getting up there in age. And so they kind of made it a point to stop by and see him each time they were out there, and he was interested in where they'd been and in the mountains and what they were doing. Well, one time when they stopped, the chiefs got very interested in what they were talking about, and he finally started telling them a story about a Spaniard and his men mining back in those mountains back around 1750, and the Indians run them out of there and killed a lot of them, but the Spaniard and his servant got away because they had horses. That's what Chief Six was saying. So this took place sometime in 1750. But anyway, he kind of pointed or talked about looking at the mountains, and on the other side between this peaks or whatever, you'd find a stone house and a mine shaft. Well, Rose and his father went around and they did find it. And they went ahead and filed a claim on that mine. So after filing the claim, they went in and started to work, but they took some samples out of it down at the bottom or whatever and had it assayed and figured out that mine had been played out. All the high grade had been pulled out, and what was left wasn't really worth working. Okay, so they kept kind of looking around. They went down towards the river, the Gila River, and they found an old Spanish arrasta, which is kind of a round, flat area, and they'd have a burl pull like a large rock in a circle around this, and they would grind the rock down to free up the gold, and that's kind of how that was their way of kind of grinding the gold down to get it out, free it up from the rock. And not far from that, they found an entrance to an old mine. So they went in there, and actually it was paying pretty good. It still had quite a bit of gold in it. So him and his father went ahead and started mining that, and we're doing pretty well with it. Well, this story all took place around 1930, and Rose wrote about it in that article in 1958 and 59, where Mitchell, he wrote his article probably around the 40s, but it came out in his book in 1956. Okay, and there was another story written by a fellow named Ray Howland. Well, Ray wrote the story, I think it was 1935, I think it was, the issue of Arizona Highways. And he tells about him and his wife out riding. And he starts off naming a couple of names that really didn't even pertain to that area. But anyway, they were out riding around the mountains and they come across this young Indian lad laying on the ground. He drank some bad water and he was in quite a bit of pain. So they took him back to their camp and helped give him some fresh water and kind of let him heal up for a couple of days. And he got up one morning, he was gone. Well, shortly after that, they run into him and his father a short distance away as they were riding their horses. Well, the father's name was Chief Six, the same one that Rose mentioned him. But he wasn't blind this time. He come up and he thanked him for saving his son. And he placed a necklace around Howland's wife's neck with gold nuggets. And he pointed across the way and told about a rock house and a mine. So Ray Allen went looking for him and his wife, and he found it. And he found the shaft, the mine shaft, and he said it was about 75 feet deep. And they were going to go ahead and set up camp at the bottom of the canyon and start mining. Well, that's kind of the end of the story. And Howland never did give any kind of a date in his little story that he wrote in 1935. So this fellow kind of wrote some of this up. He was saying that all three fellows, Mitchell and Rose, knew each other. They actually went treasure hunting together. So that makes a lot of sense that maybe they're, you know, after Mitchell wrote his and then Rose wrote his, he kind of flowered it up a little bit more and whatever. But if they knew Howland, they probably played off his story because he actually went down our mine. So I went and did some research. So if Rose and his father filed a claim on that in the 1930s, it should show up in the Maricopa County ledgers and logs, and they have a good database online. You can search that. Well, I went searching, and the only one I could find had Rose on it was from 1935. We'll take a look at it, and it was an RC Rose along with a George Couche. That was the only one I found, so I thought, well, maybe they accidentally filed it over in the next county, Pinal County. So I went over to Pinal County and I had to go through their microfiche and search all the films on reviewer, and I could find nothing with Rose had filed it during that time frame. So the next thing I did, I went and started searching for Ray Howland. Then I hit a jackpot. Howland and a couple of our fellows started filing claims in 1918. They filed 7 at one time in 1918. And over the years, Howland kept filing a couple claims here and there, filed some different water right claim, affidavits of doing work on those claims. And I think his last claim, he had some in 1920, 28, and 34. So I'll show you those in a minute. But Howland's story is probably the most truthful of any of them. I think that Rose and Mitchell just wrote treasure stories and flowered them up. They had a thread of truth and they just expanded on it. But I think that Howland actually, he told the story, he wouldn't tell exactly where it all happened at, because he was still pretty interested in 1934. He still filing claim for that whole area, and he was mining, so he didn't want a lot of people coming back there. So he wrote this little article, probably got paid $100 or something for writing it. So I want to show you these real quick, a little close-up. I'm going to point them out for you, okay? This was a log claim filed in 1935. They actually posted it in 34. And you can see it's got, looks like George Couche and R.C. Rose. It was the only mining claim I could find. There was none down by the river. And their location is pretty dicey as hardly anything. It says it's 22 miles east of Elam Bend in the Johnson Mining District. Okay. Next we have Ray Howland and two other fellows. They filed 7 claims at one time, starting off with Pima Chief 1 through 6. Then he filed a mountain spring water right on some water he found up there in February 1920. He filed affidavit of labor that he performed up there in the mines in 1920 also. If you file those affidavits, then you don't have to pay a mining claim fee, your yearly fee, because you've done labor work. Okay, then he filed another one called the Pima Chief Junior Mining Claim, and that was filed in 1920. He filed another claim, Kamatki claim, in 1928 with another fellow, Jack Blake. And then in 1934, he filed 2 more, Pedro Gold and Pedro Gold 2, but he only had his name on them. Okay? So that's everything about I could find on this, and Ray Howland seems to be the guy that did a lot of the work up there and really knew the area. Okay? If you go out there, just, you know, make sure you stay in the right areas. Don't go over an Indian reservation and the wilderness area. But, you know, it's a good little hike, good little day trip out there. Watch for the, you know, the Arizona pinstriping on your vehicle, because there's a few branches sticking out along the way on the trail. But anyway, stay tuned. I've got another one coming up here shortly. It's about a silver vein south of Las Vegas. And I actually found that vein some years ago. And I'll go ahead and take you out there and show you that. But anyway, have a good day and stay safe.